All right, Youngstown, we're back again with another episode of Belly Left Leadership. I'm the Superintendent, Jeremy Batchelor. And remember, this podcast is about leadership, and it's about development, and it's about community. But it's based off of an old simple football play, that belly play, which is a very simple play, but powerful when executed the right way. So the mantra is about knowing their assignments, practicing their assignments, repetition, everybody knowing what their job is, and then doing it and running it to perfection and running it until they stop it. And so I have a very special guest with me here today, someone that I consider a friend now. We've known each other for a little while and gotten to be in each other's presence for a couple of times and a couple meetings. And then we've developed this thing where we're having some regular meetings and just having conversation and enjoying each other's life journey, and then also what we're both doing in the community. So I have with me Mr. Juan Santiago, and I'm going to let him introduce himself to you and tell you more about who he is. So, Mr. Santiago, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelor.
Thanks for being here, man. So tell the audience who you are and how you're connected to Youngstown City School District.
Okay, so who I am, I'll say first and foremost, I'm a husband of Silas Santiago, 32 years.
Okay.
Both graduates of East High School. And
shout out to the Golden Bears.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Father of 3 young men.
Okay.
They did not attend Youngstown City Schools, unfortunately, but fine young men, and they're in the community and doing some good things. So grateful for that. And how I'm connected to the school system. I was a graduate of East High School many years ago. Played a little basketball. Okay. Ran track, cross country. So Golden Bear through and through.
All right, a little cross country. We might talk about that a little bit. These long distance runners, man, something different. All right.
Yes, sir.
All right. So tell us about your career. What you do? What's your career trajectory been like? And let's dive into the current role that you have.
Okay. So I kind of stumbled across my career. I'm in banking.
Okay.
And 22 years exactly.
All right.
22 years. And so actually I was having lunch at my mom's house. This was many years ago.
Yeah.
So a little story behind how I got into banking. And so my sister worked for a nonprofit, and she was in the employment section and helping individuals connect with jobs. And so just in a brief conversation, I just mentioned to her, I said, hey, is there anything out there?
Yeah.
Not that I was looking necessarily, but she mentioned a position with Home Savings and Loan Bank at the time.
Okay.
And I mentioned that they had a position open for a lending and helping people acquire homes and build homes and things and such. And so I thought, kind of piqued my interest. And so, lo and behold, I ended up having an interview, got into it. And so I had been helping individuals acquire homes, whether it's affordable housing, market rate housing and such. But it really opened my eyes to the need in the community.
Okay. All right.
And not only that, but just building relationships.
Okay.
And so as a result of that, now I'm in a community development space. So it's what the bank does to help and give back to the community in the space of affordable housing, making capital accessible to small businesses, small farms, community projects, what we invest in dollars into our community, and then finally what we do to serve our communities, whether it's serving on boards, financial literacy, home buyer education, but all of those elements, I oversee that facet of what the bank does. And how that ties into what banks do is the fact that there's a regulator checks on us every 3 years to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our communities. So my heart and passion has always been to serve in some capacity and to be able to do it in the banking world, in the finance sector, but with a focus on helping the community grow and thrive. Then those efforts, kind of tie in nicely. And then our footprint is in Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Canton, Akron, Youngstown, Warren, and some other rural communities in Western Pennsylvania and Northeast Ohio, but I focus on those metro areas.
Okay. All right. And that's, for our scholars and folks, we think of banking, we think, I put my money in the bank or, I withdraw my money, but there's so much more to banking and so much more to how it impacts our community. And I think you just laid that out. So right now you're working for
Farmers National Bank.
All right.
Yes,
I want to make sure they get their due, you know what I'm saying, for doing that good in the community and having people like you that do really good things in our community, helping our folks. So so you said you kind of stumbled upon it. What did you originally want to do?
Well, I worked for a company called Commercial Intertech, which prior to that, it was called commercial shearing.
Okay. All right.
One of the companies here in the area for many years. And so I was a little bit in computers,
Okay.
got into inside sales. I was in the manufacturing part, kind of helping to plan the workload. I mean, that's many years ago.
Okay.
But, it's funny. I always did, I had a really good high school teacher, Mr. Cochran, at East High School.
All right.
And so I had him for Algebra 2 and pre-calc. And I remember, really enjoying mathematics.
Okay.
But had I gone that way, I thought I was going to be an accountant.
Okay.
And, you have to find your passion. So
Absolutely.
I can appreciate people who crunch the numbers.
Yeah.
But I'm more of a people person.
There you go.
So getting out. So banking really, what it's done is, and I think in any capacity, whether it's education, banking, government, the arts, it's always relationships. And so I found that to be something where I'm helping people to achieve a small part of the American dream in home ownership. So to answer your question, it was thinking, hey, numbers, so math or something like along those lines. But really and truly, when I came across the banking, I found my calling to say, hey, it's really helping people and more importantly, helping the community to better advance. I
think you said relationships 3 times already. And I mean, it's like, it's the key. I tell people all the time, one of my mentors is Dr. Bill Daggett. And he kind of developed that framework of rigor, relevance, and relationships in education. And so we want to make sure that education is rigorous to make sure that our scholars and our folks get what they need. Make sure it's relevant to their lives. But in order for them to buy into that thing and for folks to really buy on and learn it, and I think it's in any industry, it's not just in education, we develop that relationship with people and develop relationships, period. Things are more meaningful. And so I think I've heard you say that even in the banking industry, relevance and relationships are key.
What people have to understand, all banks, institutions have money to lend or money to take in the form of deposits.
Right.
But yet, so how do you differentiate or how do you set yourself apart? And it's really building that and being a community bank when you're able to build relationships with people. There's a trust factor that comes into play. And so, they say if you get to know someone, you like them and you trust them, you want to do business with them.
There you go.
So with all things being equal, that's really the key.
Okay. All right. You heard it here. Treat people well.
Absolutely.
Right.
And actually, and I don't.
No, you're good.
The question.
Let's keep it going, man.
so I think about my mind goes back to leadership podcasts and I think about teachers that I had and more importantly, not more importantly, but in addition to that, my principal at the time at East High School was Mr. Locke Beecham.
Okay, shout out to Mr. Beecham.
Yes, sir.
Shout out to Locke.
Yep. And so he always instilled in us, you are somebody.
Oh yeah.
And coming from the Youngstown City Schools, sometimes there may be certain perceptions or stigmas attached, but he really helped us to believe in ourselves. And so he would be one of when we're talking leaders, good leaders, he would be someone that comes to mind, in that segment.
Yes, sir. You segueing into the next part.
Okay.
And that's great though, because I wanted to ask you, how do you define leadership? And you mentioned 2 teachers and 2 educators who've had a great impact on your life already. But how do you define leadership?
I went through a leadership training, and for me, they said, if you could boil leadership down to one word, what would it be? And they had said influence. For me, it really, and I go back to a pastor who's deceased now, a very prominent leader in our community, was Bishop Wagner.
Yes, sir.
And so I believe leadership, in my estimation, would be, again, it is influence, but it's helping to draw out the purpose in a person or helping them to fulfill the abilities that they have, the God-given talents and abilities that they have, and to bring them to the forefront. So when it's hard to, when you think about it, one word, wow, influence. But yet, for me, I look at great leaders. I believe John Maxwell had shared in one of his conferences, he uses the acronym CLUE, and it's connect, listen, understand, and empathize. So for me, I would add on the L, not only listen, but learn, because oftentimes when someone's in a leadership role, they don't know everything. It's really, you're learning from others.
Absolutely.
And so it's really great leaders part probably the last 3 to 4 years, I've gone around and talked to different CEOs and presidents and executive directors of different organizations. And I was asking, what's the most important thing? If you were to speak to a younger you,
Right.
what would you tell them is integral to being a leader? One person told me she was the head of a statewide philanthropic organization, people over profits.
Mhm.
Now that doesn't bode well in the banking industry because we have metrics to meet.
Absolutely.
But it's putting people first.
Mhm.
Other people, it's really in valuing people.
Yeah.
And that's key, because when people don't feel valued, I think that becomes a challenge to go in.
Yeah.
Whether it's
Well, you said that. I mean, it's definitely we all have those metrics that we have to meet. But I think everything we do, you got to care about people, and even when the goal is to make money, 9 times out of 10, if you treat people well, making money will happen. You know what I mean? And I get fussed at a lot of times by my wife and my kids because I don't do a lot of fictional reading. I don't do a lot of like pleasurable reading. I read a lot of leadership books. I read a lot of articles, those types of things, because I'm constantly trying to hone my craft. I believe in what I do, and I'm always trying to help people, even not just in the education space, but just in the life space. You know what I mean? I think we've connected because when we get together, we're supposed to get together and talk about business, and then for the first half hour or so, we end up just talking about life. And I love that. But as you grow, you learn that you have to take care of people, because if you don't, people revolt, processes will break down, things of that nature. And so I think learning how to take care of people is paramount. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So tell me, you mentioned Golden Bear Loan. All right.
Yes, sir.
Still in the community. How important is it for alumni to stay connected to the school district? And how are you staying connected to the school district?
It's extremely important. I heard a quote. Tim Tebow was speaking to he was a Florida Gators quarterback, Heisman Trophy winner, short stint in the NFL.
Yeah.
But he was speaking to a large audience. It was a stadium full, actually. And he was defining the difference between success and significance.
Okay.
He goes, success is about you. Significance is about others.
Wow.
And so for me, staying connected is really giving back.
Mhm.
I think it's incumbent upon us, those of us who've maybe quote unquote found our way and maybe doing some things positively. It's giving back. And I think I use the illustration of a flask with water. If you're constantly filling in yourself, there's going to come a point where there's overflow.
Yes, sir.
But then if it falls out of the glass or the flask and it falls on the ground, it's no good.
Mhm.
But if you're pouring into others, and it allows for others to continue to pour into you, you can continue to receive because you're giving back. So I think it's necessary for individuals to, if you're in the area, or even if you're in a different area, you have some wisdom, some knowledge, some insight and perspective that's valuable to those coming up behind us. And I think that's what's leaving a legacy. It's really giving back to others and understanding it has to go beyond just yourself into the greater good. How I'm getting involved now, there's some young people that I've gone into East High School and spoken to some of the classes there, to the young people. Now we're talking about maybe some financial education that could be coming down the road. And so that's an area that I know, but to your point that you mentioned, I like to speak about life. So we have career pathways that we want to follow, and everybody has a desire to do some great things professionally, but I think there's more than just what we do, because that doesn't define who we are. There's a difference between who you are and what you do.
So in one of our conversations we had, you asked me about, some of my leadership, folks that I look up to and this and that. And, I mentioned Tony Dungy. And I think I've heard about 3 things that you said since we've been sitting here that I read in my Tony Dungy devotional or in some conversations in the book that I've read in Quiet Strength. And honestly, I hope you don't mind me saying this. When I talk to you, I feel like I'm talking to Tony Dungy. So because he mentioned it in one of the quotes, I think a couple weeks ago I was reading, and he talked about, I was a head football coach, but that's not who I was. You're obviously a successful banking industry person, but that's not who you are. I'm a superintendent, but that's not who I am. And so I really and I think our young people asked me when I was the principal at East High School, how do we turn around the graduation rate? it wasn't because of strategies and whatever. It was really about speaking life. It was about teaching our young people that what Mr. Beecham taught you guys 30, 40 years ago, that we are somebody. And no matter what people say, that report card doesn't define us. Those letter grades or those stars don't define us. And so I just love connecting with people who have that like-minded spirit, that like-minded thought process. And that's what our kids need to hear, what our kids need to see, need to feel. Our community needs to see it and feel it and hear it. So I love talking life with you. All right.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I try to instill that into my sons, that, and that's where it really starts.
Mhm.
We put a lot on the school system.
Yeah.
and really and truly, it starts in the home.
Mhm.
I'm a big Denzel Washington fan.
Okay.
And so oftentimes when you listen to him in interviews, when they want to point out something that's going on in our society, whether it's racism or oppression or just different things, he always goes back to what's the home situation look like and where's the father in the home.
Mhm.
And so, leadership starts in the home.
Absolutely.
What's being modeled there, because, you preach a better sermon with your life than with your words.
Wow. So you just took me back, man. It's like you've been inside my head sometimes, man. My father passed away a little over 2 years ago, and at his service, I said, I read a poem from Langston Hughes where it talks about, I'd rather watch your sermon than hear one any day. And so that hits me hard when I hear that, because that's exactly it. In the home, having strong leadership, strong advocacy for education, strong advocacy for treating people well. Those things go a long way. And so, not dismissing what we have to do as a school district. Absolutely not. But I always say we need to be the one community, one vision, one Youngstown. We need folks, everybody, to be rowing in the same direction. And it starts at home. I 100% agree.
Absolutely.
So,
Somewhat, if I may,
yeah.
I heard a good quote, and it says, "Your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying."
Yes. Yes.
So, as we say, you can talk a good game,
Mm-hmm.
but we want to see the
I want to
results.
see the results. Absolutely. All right. So for our scholars, because for me, at the end of the day, it's about what we can pour into them. All right. So for our current scholars who aspire to leadership positions or in any industry, what advice do you give them?
Really seek purpose. I know oftentimes people will say, well, this industry in the next 5 to 10 years is going to be a booming industry.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But taking the time to really reflect introspectively and say, what gifts and talents do I have that I can better serve others in communities? So really honing in on what did God put me here on this earth to do, fulfilling purpose. One of our great leaders, Bishop Norman O. Wagner at a church I attended for some years, he was a strong advocate, and there was a season where he kept on drilling on us, purpose, purpose, purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I really encourage our young people to really take the time to find out, okay, what do you feel like you're really good at, and how does that serve? And it could be in the healthcare industry, in education, in finance, in the nonprofit world.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Wherever you're at, how am I bettering community?
Mm-hmm.
How am I serving other people? And you could be in maintenance.
Absolutely.
And how are you serving? Are you bringing excellence to the table?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we definitely want to stress, and I'm a strong advocate of whatever you put your hand to.
Yeah.
And that's, from the good book.
Absolutely. From the
do
good
with
book.
all thy might. And so it's understanding, how do you want to show up, and what does that look like?
Man, powerful stuff. And so as we work with our young people, I always tell the community, and they always say, well, how can I help kids? What can I do? And so finding that purpose, finding what you're good at. And we're here at Chopin Career and Technical Center. And, we're here and we got certain things that we're pushing our kids towards. We want every kid to come out with a pathway, but we want them to be in a pathway that they enjoy, that is part of who they want to be and their purpose. And so when I'm working with young people, the first thing I do, and there's 1,000 of them out there, people. If you're working with the young people, pastors, churches, community agencies, career interest inventories are powerful. because then it helps kids start thinking about what they want to do. And so what I always do is I start with that inventory and I make the kid fill it out and sit down and do it. Take 10, 15 minutes and do that. And then we talk through what those results are, because I don't want to tell you to go take up engineering and you don't like science. You know what I mean? I don't want you to tell you to go be a doctor or a nurse because you want to make a lot of money, but you don't like blood. I mean, and so we got to really be realistic, but there's so many interest inventories so kids get to understand who they are, what their passion is, what their skill sets are. And so I encourage people, as you're working with our young people, have them do that career interest inventory, because it gives them an understanding of what they want to do, but then it also helps you guide them not only technically in what they should be doing, but who they should be putting themselves around. Because I'm also big on mentorship. And so, but you want to surround yourself with mentors who can help guide you in those areas. So if I got young people who say they want to go into banking and their career lends it to themselves, I may put them in touch with Juan Santiago.
Absolutely.
So,
and I'm glad you said that, because I think one of the key components to add to finding purpose is really mentorship and relationship.
yes.
Is so critical. You know, I look through my life and I actually have 3 mentors right now that, you know, are a little older than I am, but just the wisdom and you really, someone who can be honest with you,
Yeah.
who can kind of help you gain perspective. Not, you know, oftentimes there's one mentor in my life, he'll know the answer to a question that I pose, but he won't give it to
He
me.
won't give it to you.
He's going to make me, you know, kind of really think, pray, ponder, and evaluate things. But it's caused me to think a different way. So it's really a mindset. But going back to having that toolbox, I hate to say toolbox, but of relationships and mentorship that is so critical, because we never, I think, you know, they say when you stop learning, you stop growing.
Absolutely.
So we want to continue to grow. And, you know, I'm at a season now in my life where you know, you're looking at everything and say, hey, I want to continue to get better.
Absolutely.
In what I'm doing and always learning.
Just wanted, you know, kind of expand on what you said. The day you start learning is the day you die, really. I mean, because you kind of become dead in your growth, like you said. And so I've always believed in that. And so even like you, I'm superintendent, but I have other former superintendents or current superintendents that I kind of have mentored me as well. And even some folks that were not superintendents that were like teachers that I have relationships with, I stay in touch with. And I'll give a shout out to my wife. My wife always says, Jeremy, don't ever forget what it's like to be a teacher. So, and then now that I'm a superintendent, she tells me, don't ever forget what it's like to be a principal. And it keeps me grounded, you know, because, you know, in the rat race of what we have to do, I have to think at a different, higher level, but I have to remember how those things are going to impact others. And that's how my leadership is going to influence what's happening. I got to remember what it was like to be in those seats. And I think that's key. And so I thank her for always keeping me grounded, because trust me, she does not let me forget. When we get ready to make big decisions, and, you know, even with this whole transition we're doing, you know, we're making decisions and we're having conversations. She'll say to me, well, how's that going to impact your principals? How's that going to impact your leaders? And I'm like, oh, they got to do their job. But no, what she really makes me think harder about, you know, whether we're doing something and it's really truly going to work and what's best for our kids. So thank her, I guess, honey.
Shout out to my wife as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right, we're getting ready to kind of get close to the end, but I always do this, and I kind of want to freestyle a little bit.
Okay.
So talk to me. You here, you grew up in Youngstown, you graduated from Youngstown City Schools, East High School, still involved in our community at a high level. What do you want to say to our community? What are some last parting words or words of wisdom you want to share with our community? I believe we're at a crux. Our community's taking a turn for the positive, but we got a lot of work to still do. So what do you want to say to our community?
What I want to say to the community is really consider empathy. When I alluded to the word CLUE, the acronym, you know, connect, listen, understand, and empathize. I think we've lost that in a society where everything's very divisive. Try to understand where people are coming from. Take the time to learn, to listen, and that empathy is so, I can't stress it enough, to really understand. Not everybody grew up the same way you did and had all the, you know, maybe not all the advantages, but a number of advantages maybe that you didn't. So I think when we start to care about other people, value other people, listen and try to understand where they're coming from, then it helps us to be able to work together. We didn't talk about teamwork, but that's so critical. Mentorship, again, that's so critical. Relationships, first and foremost, and just having, I think, respect for other people, understanding. Let's work together to make it better, not just about ourselves and our own family, but those that we have influence and connection with in our daily life and beyond that.
So I'm gonna add a couple things. I'm gonna say, community, go look at our portrait of a graduate that we developed back in the spring and that we rolled out, and we talked about it at our state of the school a couple weeks ago. Mr. Santiago, I don't even think he was a part of that. He wasn't at our state of the schools, but he just laid out all 5 pieces of the portrait of a graduate, which is what our community said it wants our kids to have when they leave us. And that empathy is one of those things, that communication, that responsibility, that critical thinking, all those things we want our kids to have in order to be the next leaders and workers and doctors and lawyers and superintendents of the Youngstown City School District, of our community. And so I love how it all comes together and how, the things that we talk about. But you mentioned teamwork. Talk to me. Sounds like you want to go there a little bit. Talk to me about what teamwork means and how it lands on you.
And I'm sure you're familiar with the proverb.
Absolutely.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Yeah. That's a quote that resonates with me. And it really, teamwork from in the family, it takes a team. Mm-hmm. Parents, the children, because the parents are instilling into the kids. Yeah. And it goes beyond that. In the workplace, it takes a teamwork. I mean, you may have you have the captain, the superintendent, the principal, everybody has their role, but it takes the team. Mr. Batchelor does his work with the Youngstown City Schools, but it's because he has an excellent team. And it's really something I learned from a CEO at a bank I worked at previously. And he mentioned, he goes, hey, I may not be the brightest person, but one thing I do understand is to surround myself with people who are.
Absolutely.
And so, that's at every level, government, in the faith-based community, arts. It doesn't matter what segment of society you're in. It really takes the gifts and talents of everybody together. I'll give you an example. I was at an event and they were talking about, hey, we're going to put they break up in, I think, 5 different groups, what skill sets you have.
Right.
So you're very analytical. Someone, I'm more of a people person. We're the warm and fuzzy, relationships, we can talk. But yet, if you put all of one group together, then it makes it difficult because this group may want to talk all day, but they're not getting much done.
Right.
The other group they understand all the analytics and the metrics, but yet they're losing the connection.
Right.
So, but when you can put that team together and say, we have a little bit of this, and everybody's kind of sharpening each other and helping develop those quality traits that we have. And it's like together as a team, it works so much better. Everybody loves the quarterback in football, but yet it takes a line
yes, indeed,
to protect that quarterback. He has to throw the ball to somebody. So it takes the receivers being able to get open or sometimes a tight end blocking for somebody else. But together, that's why football is always used in analogies and illustrations.
Absolutely. And I promise you, community, we did not rehearse this. We did not rehearse this. But this whole podcast, this whole leadership mantra, is based off of that belly left and what you just described in that whole teamwork mentality and each position knowing what it has, but then the importance of that offensive line. I'm the superintendent, but I view myself not as the quarterback. Because really, shout out to quarterbacks, they do a great job. But without that offensive line, they can't perform. And so I played left tackle, and I worked my position as a leader as a left tackle. It's my job to remove barriers to make sure that the entire organization move forward. And I try to lead that way, and I try to make other people understand that influence, that we all have a role to do. We all have a job to do. But if we all understand where we're trying to go and we know each other's job, but we're not trying to do each other's job, like I know what the quarterback's supposed to do, but it's not my job to do it. It's my job to remove barriers to make sure that he can do his job. So that teamwork and everybody understanding that that's what this whole belly left mantra is about. and then running it until they stop it. Mr. Santiago, do you have any last words before we close out for the day?
Oh, any last words? Putting, and I'll go spiritual mode for just one
There you
moment.
go.
The two greatest commandments, the first one talks about loving God and to what extent we do that with everything in us, but also to love others as ourselves. So just being mindful to be respectful of other people, to love other people, and understand everybody's on a journey. Everybody comes from a different place. But when we can learn to care about our fellow man and to look out for other people, it makes a better society. Not only us as individuals, but it makes a better society, a better community, and a better world.
You got it. So now I know the last time we talked, you said you were getting ready to start a podcast. You gotta let me know when you started, because I want to give it a shout out, make sure my folks listen, because you dropped a bunch of pearls of wisdom today, and you always drop them when we have our conversations. So I thank you for being on. Youngstown, until next time, remember, belly left leadership. Understand your assignment. Practice it. Repeat it. Understand you're part of a team. Execute those assignments at a high level, and then just keep running it until we stop it. Take care.